Today we'll be checking out filming locations for a movie that I think's underrated and sometimes completely forgotten. We'll be looking at locations for the 1986 Sylvester Stallone movie, Cobra. Let's go see what we can find. On the corner of Manhattan Beach Boulevard and Inglewood Avenue in Redondo Beach, right here in front of me is where that person was loading groceries into their car. And we see the supermarket killer come in through that driveway and right across the parking lot. Across the street there's a business that says wood building materials that can clearly be seen in the background behind him as he rides through the parking lot. And as you can see, it's still there today and looks exactly like it did in the movie. He parks his motorcycle right here in the handicap spot. This is the spot that he would have been parked in and then walked into the King Market, which as you can see is now a 99-cent store. The supermarket killer heads into the market and pushes his way through the customers. And right here, these are those doors that he walks through. As things begin to heat up outside, a crowd begins to gather, and right next to these trash cans is where those payphones were. And right across the street, that exact same do not enter sign can be seen next to the alley. This Winchell's Donuts and Barber Shop can be seen in the background in a couple of different shots. And believe it or not, all these years later, there's Winchell's Donuts and there's the Barber Shop. Of course, the outside of the building has been updated quite a bit, but the businesses are still there. In front of that Winchell's is where they decide that it's time to call in Cobra. We see Cobra come screeching down the street and into the parking lot. Right over here is where Cobra would have been being filled in on what's going on inside the store, and he would have been parked right over here. As he heads into the store, he stops to take a sip from a warm beer that he grabbed off the shelf, because what else do you do in the middle of a hostage situation? In the rear corner of the store is where Cobra encounters the supermarket killer, and I believe this is that very spot. After Cobra takes care of the supermarket killer, he heads outside and he's met with nothing but criticism from reporters. Of course, all of that happens right here in front of the store. This school across the street can be seen a couple of times. This is the South Bay Adult School. The funny thing is, I not only used to live just a couple miles from here, I used to work at that adult school across the street. I was the nighttime maintenance guy, and I used to walk across the street on my lunch break and go to that Winchell's Donuts and this 99-cent store, and at the time I had no idea this is where they filmed Cobra. We see Cobra pulling up to his beachside apartment and using his car to push the lowrider out of his parking spot. Cobra would have been driving right here down the Venice Beach boardwalk and parking his car right here along the sand. In the movie, there's some type of awning over a bench out here in the sand, which as you can see, that bench and awning no longer exist. After getting into an altercation with the guys in the lowrider, Cobra heads into his apartment. And here it is right here. That's the exact same path that Cobra walks to head into his apartment, which is that white building right there on the left side. And right up there on the top floor would have been his apartment. If you remember, he had those windows that overlooked the ocean. And can anybody tell me why he takes some pizza out of the fridge and cuts it with scissors before eating it? Does anybody else find this strange, or have I just been eating pizza wrong my entire life? Later in the movie, we get a nighttime shot of his apartment when he comes home and he's greeted by the same guys on the lowrider before heading upstairs and getting into that long battle with the men on his patio right in front of that awesome neon Pepsi sign. One of the men ends up falling off the side of the building and right along the fire escape. The first time we see the night slasher and his crew claiming a victim is right here outside of the Mugs Up coffee shop. We see the van driving right underneath the 10 freeway, and although now it's called Stevens, that sign is exactly the same. And if you look up this location on Google, it's still listed as Mugs Up. We see the waitress lock up the restaurant and walk to her car that's parked right across the street, as we notice that the van has parked in the parking lot right next door. Now, as you can see, it's the exact same building, but it has been remodeled a little bit. They got rid of some of the windows and whatnot. And right next door, this is that parking lot that the van pulls into. No longer a parking lot, now it's used for a pallet company. But other than those small changes, the Mugs Up coffee shop is still here and looks almost exactly like it did. The next time that we see the night slasher claiming a victim, they're following a car through downtown LA that makes a left onto 4th Street and pulls underneath the bridge. Here's where they rear end the car, getting it to pull over, and that happens right here against that curb. That's the very spot where the night slasher rear ends that car. Also at this location is the first time we see Ingrid. She's coming from down that way, headed towards 4th Street, coming right towards where I'm standing right now. As she passes by the night slasher, they make eye contact, she gets scared and drives off, turning onto 4th Street. But not before the night slasher can get her license plate number. We see the crime scene that the night slasher has left behind, and it would have been located right here. Those statues of all the people would have been right next to this cement pillar right here. And right there in that driveway is where one of the police cars would have been parked. We get a shot of this skyline as Cobra meets up with the other police officers in a parking lot in downtown Los Angeles. That parking lot would have been located across the street from the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, and that parking lot is now the Walt Disney Concert Hall. Absolutely nothing about this location is the same. The parking lot is now the Walt Disney Concert Hall. The buildings in the background are different. Everything has changed, but this is the location. After Ingrid's attacked by the night slasher, she's brought here to Los Angeles Central Hospital, where the night slasher returns once again to give it another try. And right here is that building. It's the old Trans-America building in downtown LA. Those are the stairs that we see the night slasher walking down. He's actually walking right along this sidewalk right here. And of course we see Cobra speeding up to the hospital and parking right in front. It's a little hard to get the exact shot with all these new buildings and trees, but this is pretty much the shot we get. And I have to thank my good friend Martin for helping me track down this location. The next day we see Cobra and Ingrid leaving the hospital and getting into his car. Of course, all that was shot right here in front of the building as well. And right about where that yellow truck is, that's where we see the car pulling away from the curb. They pull away from the hospital in downtown Los Angeles, and they're instantly in Long Beach. Right here is the location where Gonzalez comes around the corner just before the truck slams into him. We see Cobra driving along Seaside Way towards Pine Avenue, just before he rounds the corner onto Pine Avenue, being followed by some of the killers. We even get a shot of the Seaside Way street sign, and that building on the left looks almost exactly the same. The building that we see them driving in front of when they're driving down the sidewalk is the old Long Beach City Hall. And that red brick building that we see in the background, as you can see, is no longer there. If we just take a peek over this construction wall, you can see right here is where they were driving down the sidewalk. We see them come racing around the corner at Golden Shore and Seaside Way, and that big white building at 11 Golden Shore can clearly be seen in the background. As they speed away from Golden Shore, we see them screeching onto the freeway, but in actuality this is just a small access road that's oftentimes used as a freeway entrance for movies. After a short chase through a parking structure, Cobra crashes through the second story in order to not let the bad guys get away. That takes place here at this parking structure just off of Seaside Way. That first opening that you see on the left side of the screen, that's the section that he crashes through. And if you pay attention to that scene, some people can be spotted standing up on this second story watching as they film. The car chase continues, but changes from Long Beach to Venice Beach, as we see them flying over these vehicle bridges located at this stretch of canals in Venice, California. As you can see, the distance between each bridge is actually much longer than what it looks to be in the movie. As Cobra and Ingrid get ready to leave town, we very briefly see them pass underneath the 110 freeway at 2nd Street. On their way up to San Remos, they stop at this roadside gas station. We see Gonzalez coming out of the market with a fistful of candy bars and Ingrid coming out of the diner. As you can see, both locations look exactly as they did in the movie. This is the Rock Store in Cornell, California, a famous hangout for motorcyclists and celebrities since 1961. Over here is where that souvenir stand was that we see Cobra hanging out at. And over here by the gas pumps is where Ingrid first learns that Cobra's real name is Marion Cabretti. As they enter into San Remos, we see them crossing over this bridge. It's actually the old bridge bringing you into Peru, California. No longer a functional bridge, it's closed off to traffic. We see this bridge a little bit later when the Night Slasher's crew is coming into town. Now in the movie there's a white fence that can be seen on the side of the road, and there's still just a little bit of that fence hanging around. And if we look up here on the bridge, you can see some of the original green paint that can be seen in the movie. The town of San Remos was actually shot in Peru, California, and some of the stuff you see in the movie was done just for production. I'm gonna assume that's the case with those railroad tracks that are going across the road. But the mountains that you see behind the buildings are unmistakable. Right there on the left is where the cafe would have been that you see them pulling up to, but as you can see, it's no longer there. But that service station right next to the cafe is still there and looks almost exactly the same, including that awning. This building right over here on the right side is completely different, but the building just to the left is the one that had the horse on the roof in the movie, and the building just to the left of that, the windows on the 2nd story can be seen peeking over the service station in the movie. The Crossroads Motel was built just for the movie so that it could be destroyed at the end. And here at that same intersection that we were just looking at, this is where the Crossroads Motel was. As the Night Slasher's gang is coming into town, we see them very briefly pass by this church. We also see them very briefly pass by the San Remos Sheriff Station as one of the guys runs inside to take the sheriff hostage. That sheriff station is actually Peru Pizza, and as you can see, the building looks almost exactly the same. Just down the street from the Crossroads Motel, we see Cobra and Ingrid being chased by the Night Slasher's gang. And I'm pretty sure this is the road where that scene was filmed. Now this road looked a little bit different in the movie. That park on the left side was not there at the time, but those railroad tracks can very briefly be seen in the movie. And for the ending of the movie, we find ourselves back here at the same intersection where the Crossroads Motel was. We see Cobra and Ingrid get onto a motorcycle, ride away from the Crossroads Motel, and off into the sunset.